Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dunn Wisdom Morning Show. I am your host, Melissa P. Dunn, CEO of MD Marketing Network and founder of this Dunn Wisdom movement. As you know, on Wednesdays at 9 a.m., I like to come here and share with you tips to help you to live a more successful life as you define success. I also enjoy introducing you to those in our community that are getting it done, women who are powerful in their own right, making things happen in the community. Typically, I alternate between interviews and then a day that I teach you something that I learned myself. Well, today was intended originally to be a solo show, but after this week's unprecedented decision by the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Weird, to overturn Roe versus Wade, it weighed so heavily on me. I really wanted to create a space here on this show today where we can have a conversation, where we can have an open discussion with women who are already working to protect women's rights, but more importantly, where we can have a conversation and share our feelings, right? So here's what I'm going to invite you to do today. If you're watching this live or on the replay, I want you to participate in the conversation, particularly if you are a woman and you're feeling some sort of way about this decision from the Supreme Court, right? Join into the conversation. I welcome you to be a co-host today as we explore Roe versus Wade. What's next? I want to bring my first guest on. She is Commissioner Nancy Metayer from the beautiful city of Coral Springs. She is a colleague and she is a first-time commissioner like me. We both got elected to public service around the same time. She is also a scientist. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome my first guest today, Commissioner Nancy Metayer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I know I'm not new to the show, but love what you're doing here. And congratulations to all the amazing work you're doing. I don't think you give yourself enough kudos while we're on the show as well. So you shared some news with us prior, but I'll let you share that at the end when we talk about how we can all support each other. But we can't do this work and can't share this information without the great work you're doing here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Nancy. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing in Coral Springs.
Absolutely. So, hi, everyone. My name is Commissioner Nancy Metayer. I use she, her pronouns. And like Melissa had mentioned, she is also an elected colleague of mine as well in Lauderhill. We do the very similar things. We balance a budget. We ensure the needs of our city is met, whether that's economic, whether that's supporting our small businesses to ensure our small businesses are able to thrive here and have a booming economy. We also make sure that we are moving our city in a progressive lens or framework. So our city does a good job with coordinating a strategic plan and making sure that we're fulfilling all the needs of our cities there. I have had the honor and privilege to move forward a few initiatives with the support of my colleagues, which is creating a sustainability office, ensuring that we have a sustainability manager that is taking a closer look on how our city is addressing climate change and making sure our city is resilient and ready to face those impacts directly head on. Also have had the opportunity this is a great conversation, to pass a resolution in regards to Roe versus Wade, ensuring that the folks in our community know where our commission stands when it comes to having full autonomy of your body. As a resolution is very symbolic. It sends a message to Tallahassee and higher offices that our city wants to make sure that we are protecting the rights of anybody with a uterus. So that means trans men, that means women, that means non-binary people have the opportunity to say, hey, if I want reproductive health care, or if I want reproductive freedom, have full autonomy of my body, this resolution affirms that my city stands with my core values. So that was a big win for us. It was a 3-2 vote. Not everyone on my commission had the same idea, but we are seeing now it's more and more pivotal to have cities move forward and say, hey, this is where we stand, because local government is the closest to the people. So that was a big win for us. So when folks ask, how do you feel about Roe versus Wade, where a city has said, hey, this is how we feel, we want to make sure we're protecting your bodily autonomy.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for your work. And please share that resolution with me.
We would love to add you to the list.
Yes, share it with me. Email it to me today, please. Let's look at it. Additionally, our next guest is no stranger to this show at all. She is the executive director of the Women's Foundation of Florida, one of the organizations that I personally choose to support with my time. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Ms. Takeata to the show. Hey, Takeata.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Melissa, for having me back. And I'm really excited to be in this discussion with Commissioner Metayer as well. So welcome, everyone. I am Takeata King Pangt. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the executive director of the Women's Foundation of Florida. We are a statewide organization that is dedicated to empowering and educating women and girls to step into leadership, because we know that's how we're going to change how the world works. And with everything that's going on right now, we need women in positions of leadership to step up and to fight back, because we are in a place where we have to really let folks know that women are not to be trampled. We have rights and we are going to demand them.
Yes, yes, yes. Speaking of rights being trampled, if we can have Commissioner Metayer back on, ladies, help me and our audience understand what happened.
What happened has never happened in history before. So typically when the United States Supreme Court makes a decision, that sets precedent for other legislation or other cases like itself. So what DOTS and Planned Parenthood was basically a Mississippi lawsuit where this 6 weeks ban came into play, and Planned Parenthood was like, under Roe versus Wade, that cannot happen. So what Roe versus Wade did for the past 50 years is it set precedent when everyone trying to challenge any abortion bans, any outright illegal, not legalizing or ensuring that abortions were legal in their state. It said, hey, under privacy, under a woman's or any individual with a uterus has the right to protect their bodies, has the right to make the decisions regarding their body. So Roe versus Wade did that. Being that this decision has been overturned, all these bans, all these abortion bans, all these harsh legislation that's being passed in 26 plus states now becomes in effect, because there is no case or legislation that protects that right. So when folks are like, oh, we can just add more justices to the Supreme Court, the only person that can do that is the President of the United States, but that is unlikely to happen. And you cannot go back and reverse that decision. Now that decision is made, it is now precedent. It is now, the Supreme Court has talked. That is the law of the land. And being that it has been overturned, it is now left to the states to make decisions regarding abortion healthcare. And I want to repeat, it's healthcare, because when people speak about abortion, they think it's this horrible situation. It is a horrible situation for more individuals, but I want to reiterate that abortions happen when people want to maintain their pregnancies as well. There are people who go into saying, hey, I want to get pregnant, I want to have a child, but they aren't able to do so. And they now have to make a decision whether to save themselves or abort a fetus. And majority of the time, what is happening is they are going to choose to save themselves because they either have other children, they have other families, and right now they don't have the financial means to bring another life into this world. So this decision not only impacts our generation, but future generations to come. You are now traveling. The nearest state that allows abortion healthcare from Florida is North Carolina. Now think about the average family or and the situation we're in now with inflation, with the lack of affordable housing, with people not being paid a fair wage. And you're asking them to pump gas that's $5 or hop on a plane that sometimes you're unable to get because of all the shortages that are happening with airlines right now. Fly to North Carolina, make sure you get a date that matches with your work schedule so you can come back to work. That's unlikely to happen. And so what we're doing is we're creating more barriers for people who can't afford abortions, who are already struggling not to get one and bring another life in this world they can't support. Because what is going to happen? People of means are always going to have access to abortion healthcare. They're always going to have access. It's Black and brown, indigenous people of color or individuals of color who will not have access to healthcare, those access to those healthcare, and put themselves in a situation where they are already struggling, and it's just going to be a threat multiplier. And
wow.
For that society.
So, Takeata, this sounds like this legislation is really trampling on more than one rights of women. Potentially, it could be like a really bad thing for all women, right?
Absolutely.
Particularly women of color.
Yes, that is something that is 100% true, is that the people who are being most affected by the overturning of Roe v. Wade are going to be the more underserved populations, the populations, people of color, the lower income folks, people with disabilities, people with mental health issues that need to take medication and cannot support a pregnancy while being on that medication that allows them to live a healthy life. But I think it's really important to just take a step back and recognize this didn't happen overnight. The Supreme Court didn't just wake up this year and say, hey, we're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. I have spent almost 20 years working in progressive politics with Planned Parenthood. And I will say back in 2010, 2011, all of these bills started hitting all of the state legislators around the country, specifically in the South, and bills like the Mississippi 6-week ban, which were being filed back in 2010, but weren't being heard. People were like, that's too extreme. That's too radical. Well, as we moved forward, come 2014, 2015, 2016, all of a sudden, those bills came up in all of the legislators across the state. And so this was a concerted effort by the anti-choice movement to take this access away from people, to take this fundamental constitutional right away from all people with a uterus. And so I think it's really important to recognize that this isn't just the SCOTUS being a butthead today. This is a concerted movement that is started specifically with abortion, but we fully expect they're going to come for contraception next, specifically emergency contraception, Plan B. They're going to come for other Supreme Court decisions. If you look at the decisions that have come out in the last week, we've had really horrific decisions that will put back gun rights movements or legislation and regulation movement by allowing concealed carry without permits. We have the allowed prayer in schools, which we know is specific to Christian prayer. And so there is just a lot of attacks that we're seeing. And I know a lot of our allies in the community, specifically the gay community, are looking at things like, Oberfelds. They got their right to legalized equal marriage here in the United States of America. If the Supreme Court is overturning Roe v. Wade, is gay marriage next? And so Oh, go ahead.
And Takeata, you're absolutely right. And I also want to add interracial marriage with Loving versus Virginia. They're considering as well, and the Board of Education. And so,
Wait, stop.
yes, this is a
Wait, hold
reality.
on. Rewind. Say that again. What are the other
Yes,
two
so
that they're looking at?
interracial marriage,
The Loving case, which
Loving
allowed
and Virginia. Mhm. This is actually the case that set precedent to open doors for LGBT or same-sex marriages, LGBTQ rights. And so, as I had mentioned before, when you overturn other cases, you're setting a precedent that you can go back and overturn other cases because there's no umbrella to protect your rights. So, as Takeata mentioned, all the rights that she's listed and all the decisions that have come out in the past week, they are going into play. We are talking about interracial marriage as well, because Loving versus Virginia actually protected that interracial marriage. And so when we look at the case around education as well to desegregate schools, they're also looking into that. And they're not going to be blatantly say, hey, we're segregating schools, but they're going to fund more private schools. They are going to fund more charter schools. And what that happens to our public schools, they become under resourced and they become segregated. So it becomes the haves and the have nots. And who's going to go to those public schools? Now we have another segregated system. And so when we talk about elections, these are the consequences. We have previously seen the anti-choice movement build a strong bench. They built a bench and took over all the courts in all the states, and now the Supreme Court, and now we're paying for it.
Wow, elections have consequences. I know Takeata, the Women's Foundation, is really working to get more women, particularly women of color, into public service. Could you talk a little bit about that and why that work is so important now more than ever?
Absolutely. And we know, right? How many times we've seen those pictures where it's a big table of all white men making decisions about women's bodies, maternal health care. And so it's just integral that we have women at the table as part of the conversation, and especially women of color because they are less represented. So folks like you and Commissioner Metayer are amazing. You're building the bench in the local communities to really speak out and do the work. And the more folks that we're able to train and get into those positions, then we're not going to have to deal with these situations, or we're going to have votes to fight back against it, right? I think it's really important to note in the state of Florida, abortion is still legal. If you have an appointment for an abortion, you may still use it, and you can still access an abortion. Abortion is still legal. There are restrictions here in the state of Florida, though. As of July 21st, so July 1st, not 21st, we will have a mandatory, a 15-week ban, meaning you won't be able to access abortion in the state of Florida past 15 weeks, but you can still access it today. And then we also have a mandatory waiting period, which is also an issue because that means it takes not just one trip to the medical facility, but multiple trips. And I will note it is the same in North Carolina. They do have a 48-hour waiting period. So not only do you have to fly to North Carolina or drive there, you have to stay at least 2 nights, go to the health center twice before accessing abortion health care. And so these waiting restrictions, these 15-week bans, they make access to abortion for people much more difficult. They put women's lives in danger, and they put pregnant people's lives in danger. And so we really want to make sure that we are rallying here locally. And so it's so important. Everyone recognize it is 2022. It is an election year. We have a midterm election. We'll be electing a new governor or hopefully electing a new governor, but we have the entire state legislature is on the ballot this year. And so we can hold accountable our state legislators in Florida who continue to vote for and pass abortion restrictions.
Wow. So the local elections, the state elections, this is really where our focus needs to now shift, right? The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. The president and Congress really has domain over who sits there. They've already made their decision, and we are now reaping the consequence of that decision. So now it's brought down to the state level. So now as residents, what we need to do is what, Takeata and Commissioner Metayer?
First and foremost, register to vote. Do the research. It's super important that every person that is on the ballot this cycle, that you know where they stand, especially around abortion rights, especially making sure that everyone has full autonomy of their bodies. There are so many things that are proposed this upcoming legislative session if our governor remains the governor, which we all know he has aspirations to become president. So if he's like this now, imagine him as president of the United States and how much worse it's going to get for us all. So it's super important that you go out and vote, you do your research, you vote in the primary, because we have primaries and a general election. Some people say, oh, we just vote in August. No, you vote. The primary consists of either two people in the same party who's running against each other, and you make that decision on who you want to go into the general election. There are many people who qualified to run who are running unopposed, and you'll see their names again on the general election that's happening in November. So make sure you vote not only in August, but also in November, and find out when these early voting dates are happening and where your nearest precinct is. And if your precinct, I encourage everyone to vote early, because precincts change, things happen, the wait is longer. And being that there has been legislation passed where you can't serve water, you can't attend to anybody in the lines, it's going to make it even more of a barrier for people to want to go and vote. So I encourage you to vote by mail. And I also encourage you to vote early. So that is super important. In the same breath of what can we do now around this issue, Roe versus Wade, I encourage you all to donate to abortion funds. People who can't afford it, who need to go to North Carolina, who needs to take those days off, these abortion funds provide some type of cushion or safety net to ensure that they get the financial means so they could get their needs met if they need to travel out of state. So we have Planned Parenthood, Florida Access Network. So that's FloridaAccessNetwork.org, the Broward Women's Emergency Fund. And also, if you're in a municipality who has not passed an abortion out loud resolution, contact me, because I have the language for you. You share it, and we get these abortion out loud resolutions passed in every municipality that we can, to send a clear message to Tallahassee that the people do not want an abortion ban in the state of Florida. Sends a clear message to them. Also want to reiterate that Takeata mentioned it, you can still have an abortion here in the state of Florida, but as of January 1st, the 15-week ban goes into play. So please, 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 please do whatever you need to do to get your needs met at a timely manner, because it's just going to get a lot worse.
Effective July 1st. Yeah.
Yes, and there are actual two different websites that we recommend folks go to if you need access to an abortion, and that's abortionfinder.org or ineedana.com. That's abortionfinder.org or ineedana.com. And those are both resources that will tell you where you can access abortion at any time in your pregnancy.
Okay, thank you so much. So, I think I agree with you, Commissioner Metayer. Voting is really where we need to shift our energies right now, right? Women who need the service should access the service while they can. But our real call to action right now is for us to register as many people as possible to vote, and for us to show up at the polls in droves in August and then again in November. I can tell you our vote have consequences and they matter. And I believe that if every single woman in the state of Florida who is eligible to vote show up and vote, then our complete legislation could, our legislator could look very different, and we could send a really strong message. Well, you mentioned, Commissioner Metayer, about the precincts changing. And I know for us in Lauderhill, actually the entire state of Florida went through a redistricting process, which is why right now everybody has to run for re-election, right? And so for us, we actually went from 19 precincts to 9.
Wow.
So if you are one of my residents in the city of Lauderhill, just know that you may not be voting at the same polling place. So you need to go to, I think it's browardvotes.org, I believe is the website, to find out exactly where you're going. We had the supervisor of elections at the commission meeting this past Monday, and he shared that they're going to be mailing out new voter registration cards in the next 2 weeks. And then shortly after that, they're going to start sending out early voting ballots. So a newsletter encouraging people to vote early. So please find out where your precinct is, register to vote early, register to vote by mail, and let's really do it. This time more than ever, this is the most critical election for women's rights that we've had in, I believe, 50 years. Do you ladies agree?
I agree. I totally agree. And I think that so many women who their sweat and tears went into making sure Roe versus Wade has been protected are now like, I'm too old for this. Like, we did this 50 years ago and thought we were done. And we have to do this to not only protect this generation's rights, but future generations, and forcing someone to have a pregnancy is just unconstitutional, especially when you don't have the means to ensure that they can thrive. We don't have affordable childcare. We don't have affordable housing. We have a formula shortage. Like, the list goes on. We don't have access to tampons. Like, what more can we say when we say that women's or anybody with a uterus right now does not feel safe? And I just want to flag that there are employers that will pay for you to go to another state to get abortion health care. So really check in with your employers to make sure if that service is available to you. And so I know our colleague Sabrina Javiala had passed the parental leave, paid parental leave, and there was some stipulations in that. So I encourage other elected officials to pass legislation, local legislation that says, hey, if you are a state or a local employee, let's provide individuals the healthcare for them to go get access to the healthcare that they need. So that is also my call to action to other colleagues is, hey, let's push our municipalities to provide that healthcare for our employers as well. And if they need that care, let's figure out how we can get them that care.
I love it. And the other thing too, that I'm thinking about, Nancy, is not only to create an opportunity for us to access the healthcare in an affordable way, but the truth is that even if you don't believe that abortion is a right choice for you personally, right? Like for me personally, I don't think it's the right choice for me if I still had a uterus. But I don't have a right to take away another woman's right to choose. Correct. And so once you start making decisions about other people's bodies, then where do you stop, right? So I want you to think about the possibility of really what that would mean.
It means a lot. It means like we're walking into a dictatorship society, to be quite honest. And our forefathers right now are turning in their grave sites. Like this is not what our democracy was built on. And if you are a believer like I am, God gave us free will. He gave us free will to do as we choose, right? and we deal with those consequences as they come. Our democracy needs to respect the right of free will, needs to respect that individuals should have the right to make decisions about their body. That's between their God, themselves and their doctor and their family. And we have no right to interfere with that.
That great, powerful words of wisdom, Commissioner Metayer. Do you have any final words of wisdom to share as well, Takeata?
I would say, this election, you need to get involved, go out and vote at the very minimum. But if you have time, if you have the ability, volunteer, get involved, find a candidate that stands for the things you believe in, and go tell your community why they should vote for them. Because our governor here in the state of Florida has already said that he is looking to figure out how to further restrict access to abortion in the state of Florida. We know that if they're not calling a special session between now and the end of the year, that they're absolutely going to try to do an all-out abortion ban when we come back for legislative session in March. So these elections are very important. Educate yourselves, get involved, because that's the thing. Campaigns need people. People are what keeps the message going. It's what reaches the most amount of folks in the community. So please get involved and make sure you're educating yourself on where each of the candidates stand.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us for this powerful conversation, ladies. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and passion with the community. And thank you, guests, for joining me for this episode of the Dunn Wisdom Morning Show. Join us here again next week, Wednesday at 9 a.m., as I will be interviewing another guest and teaching you about another topic that is relevant to all of us. Remember, be kind and loving to yourself. You deserve it.